All films, we stand on the shoulders of giants, but when we think of those giants, often one of them is Stanley Kubrick. Said to have genius-level IQ, above 200, interested in chess and photography at the time. I know we all have IQs over 200 in this room, so like we're among like-minded individuals. Very smart man, innovator, a lot of filming techniques and technology involved in film production. He brings into the mainstream with his movies. He is one of those rare directors who's like a jack of all trades. Not only is he very involved in his films, you know, notoriously had final cut on most of his films after a certain point, but he made multiple movies of just different genres that are each held up on their own as great films. And one of them is perhaps the film we look tonight, a comedy, Dr. Strangelove. And then I put that note, Godfather of Conspiracies, because I really think a lot of like the conspiracy theories that are around today go back to things people have forgotten, like came first in Stanley Kubrick movies. And whether or not those ideas preceded them is a different story, but the reflection and projection of those ideas, like I definitely can trace it back to him a little bit. And then if you know anything about Kubrick, you know that he's famous for saying just one more take. The man, for a while, held the record a number of takes, supposedly made it very difficult to work with. A lot of actors struggled with the multiple takes, and Peter Sellers was one of them. So with that, we're going to be talking about Dr. Strangelove, co-written, like most things Kubrick directs, but also directed by Kubrick, based on the book Red Alert by Peter George. Comes out in January of '64. It's delayed because of the Kennedy assassination. I believe it first screens on the day of the assassination, and that's why we edit that line, Good Weekend in Vegas, from the original Good Weekend in Dallas. Modest budget, went on to be commercially and critically successful. I consider this a nightmare comedy. You can call it something else if you'd like. It's definitely a satire of the Cold War, but maybe more than that. Peter Sellers in 3 roles, as we were saying before class started, right? That was one of the studio's mandates, that he played multiple roles due to the success of that in Lolita, Kubrick's movie before that. Often ranked on greatest film list or greatest comedy lists. And then if you want to do some required reading, that little box on the bottom, you could look up stuff about the Cold War, those various races we did at the time, Kennedy in Cuba, his assassination, Operation Paperclip, and also fluoride. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about fluoride because I'm not sure I understand fluoride. I know the dentist makes me spit it out when I go to him. And yeah, original poster for this movie, but often a lot of people, when we think of it, right, it's that character of Dr. Strangelove, the character that's absent from the novel that it's based on, that really kind of steals the show for a lot of people. But I venture a guess that we each probably have a character that does that for us in this movie, and maybe it's not Dr. Strangelove. All right, so here's kind of what I'm thinking with this movie. We've talked before about nuclear weapons. We've seen it with Godzilla, right? And this is that same thing from a different angle, right? So someone once said a good comedy starts by making you laugh, but always ends by making you care. So like that's something that we should maybe keep in mind as we talk about this. Is this a good comedy given that definition? Technology is becoming more and more involved in our lives. It is creating tools and making our lives easier. We're getting more weapons, right? Technological advancement. In theory, us amassing nuclear weapons as a country is supposed to keep us safe, but that is really frightening. And entire generations of people in this country, if not around the world, right, hid under their desks in school from the nuclear bombs, did those kind of drills. And what that kind of creates is this like culture of fear. But again, those bombs were thought they were going to protect us and keep us safe from our enemies, and it becomes this really scary reality. So to me, this movie is all about paradox, and I don't think that's something that's like kind of obtuse to see. There's a lot of paradox in this movie, and I really think it's saying that like we should fear the very things that are said to keep us safe. And I say things, right, because I think sometimes those are institutions and individuals as well. right? So we'll think about that as we move forward. So we can talk about the production of the movie if you'd like, some of the difference in visual shots or the elements in the film that are representative of technology. But also I want you to think about like the art of deterrence is producing fear in the minds of individuals, right? And how that's really a direct statement about the weapons that they have. So technology you see that's important to helping us or hurting us in this movie, and maybe what it's saying about, weapons or technology in general.
The Doomsday device is designed to end nuclear war because it is making nuclear war impossible once you announce it. So, everybody developed nuclear weapons in the 40s and after Hiroshima to deter the other country from using them against them, which worked because nobody ever shot any of them against each other because they were afraid of what would happen if it came back. But because each side kept escalating, there had to be a natural end, and the Doomsday device is a natural end. It makes all nuclear war impossible if there's a Doomsday device, because if anybody launched anything, it would end the world, so nobody could ever do it again.
Yeah.
But it didn't take into account the fact that there might be human error in the announcement date.
Right.
That was the only error in the movie.
Sure, yeah, no, absolutely. If he had just announced not waited till Monday, because you know how much he loves surprises.
It's not entirely clear that Jack Ripper would have done all this if he had known that it was a Doomsday device.
Right.
Presumably, because he wanted to win the war, I think. I'm trying to remember now. He was crazy, but he was crazy because he wanted to end the communist threat, not because he wanted to end all human life. Human life. So if he knew that he would automatically lose the war, he wouldn't have done it. So I think that whole concept sets up the fact that there's no way to end nuclear war once you've let it out of the box.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be some sort of human, no matter how superlative the weapon gets or the deterrent gets, no matter how fearful you get of it, there's always going to be a human error component because the systems are designed by humans.
Yeah.
Designed by humans. So there's always a human flaw in it. The technology is only going to get to the level of where humans are using it, not to. So you can't build a perfect deterrent.
Yeah.
Because the humans have to implement it and use it, so it won't ever be used perfectly.
Right.
At least from that scene.
Okay. No, I think that's a really interesting point. And yeah, Ripper is not trying to kill everyone. He's like, I crossed the line, and now if you don't want everyone to die unknowing about the Doomsday Machine, you need to continue the second wave of the attack. You need to send the rest of them so that we wipe out all of Russia, and Russia won't be able to retaliate.
We'll get our 10% acceptable losses.
Right, yeah.
Which is what George C. Scott says at some point. If we launch now, we could probably get away with 10 or 20 million dead.
Yeah, that's all.
Dead. So we should go for it. Which is so him and Jack Ripper are basically.
And they're both.
They both
military.
understand. They both understand the position, the normal position that people had. They even have it in the movie War Games.
Well, why amass all these weapons? Why have this this ongoing conflict with the Soviets if you never intend to end it? At some point you got to do something, and I think both of those people from the military are itching to do something, right? There's been a talk and waiting and building and strategizing, so it's finally time to go. I don't know if I skipped the clip before we saw it, but one of my favorite lines is when Bud. Man, what's his last name? Turgensen says man, I really wish we had one of those Doomsday machines, right? As Strangelove is talking about what's so horrible about it. So even there you see it's that competition as well. Other thoughts, other ideas, or you want to respond or disagree? You want to think about bombs then? Yeah.
On a totally technical point too. I noticed the last time, I just watched this a week ago. But when Dr. Strangelove rolls up, he does the camera angle between the leg of the Russian and the American, and he comes right down the middle of the two of them.
Yeah, you're right.
So he kind of makes sure that you know that Dr. Strangelove is an ex-Nazi rocket scientist, or he's representing that sort of, what was the name of that operation?
Operation Paperclip.
So he comes rolling in, and he makes it really clear just from the camera angle that this is both sides' fault. He's not blaming the Russians for the Doomsday device. He's we had our, and that's where he's announcing that we also had a Doomsday project and created the fear in them that they had to make one in the first place.
What's the point if you don't tell anyone? Speaking of camera angles, there are two different cameras used in the filming of this movie, and I think if you think about it, you could probably figure out what's used for what. Because visually, this movie is a paradox. You've got really stable, smooth shots in some scenes, and then you've got a lot of handheld, shaky shots. that are almost reminiscent of like war footage. The detonating of the nuclear bombs are real test footage of real nuclear bombs going off. But the war room has got that clinical, everything's still, nothing's moving, the camera's there. Versus like them storming the military base, trying to take control back from Ripper and get the codes, like it looks like war footage. And like there's those two visual realities being presented to us just with the cameras.
Well, getting back a little bit on the cameras that are used. Whenever they're in the war room, a lot of the shots are like, I think they're like all wide angle camera.
It's a lot of zoomed out,
From a distance.
But even like shots that traditionally would be like a single shot or a two shot are filmed with the whole table in the background, or just people walking in back of like the action that's actually taking place. And with respect to the amount of power that this room has, that none of these people that you're forced to be aware of all the time, nobody's doing anything about it. You've got two guys like sort of getting nervous about it and talking about like how futile it is to really like do anything to stop this, because we've built this weapon. There's nothing really we can do at this point.
Yeah.
And it's not just two people. It's you've got the entire world, the entire room, like the smartest, the brightest, and the most powerful Americans.
No, you're right.
Just kind of sitting on their butt.
Acting like idiots, one might argue, right? Like
Well, you
being
see,
portrayed as buffoons.
There's a pratfall, and he like
That's a good
saunters
part,
his way
too.
back to the table, and the whole time he's in the shot.
Yeah, no, you're right. Chopping on that gum. All right, so let's think about politics as like we are gearing up for a presidential election within this year. Like politics is on a lot of people's mind. I know Super Tuesday just passed and all that other stuff. We have the Democratic primaries happening. But before we get to now, let's think about politics of this movie, and let's think about like the impact of politics, how I guess a politician or members of the government are portrayed, international politics, and then maybe we'll get to like parallels in our world now. But I don't know. So what do you think about how Russia and the United States are portrayed in this movie? What do you think it's saying? Ideas, thoughts? Yes.
Well, off the bat, it kind of just seems like it's like my grandmother and her sister-in-law having a conversation on the phone.
Talking about nuclear war?
Talking about anything.
Okay.
It seemed like it was like a very slowly productive conversation.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives the idea that they're kind of in on whatever's going on together. They're friendly, whereas you might imagine that they might not be. They have nuclear wars or plans placed on one another, but they're just chit-chatting on the phone.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like anxiety trying to get him on the phone. Oh, we got to call. And then once they're on the phone, it's very cordial. Yeah, I noticed that. And it is very like conversational, and it's unexpected because these are enemies, you would think. Oh, well, you know, I like talking to you on the phone. Oh, yeah, I could call just to say hello. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, how sort of something about what you said. How they seem like it's not going anywhere. Sort of like they're like immature, and that you think them to be like established people running countries, and then people who have responsibilities, and like people who have so much weight in the world are fighting in the war room. You know, they're like they're doing the fights like the slapping fights like.
It's only the Two Stooges.
Exactly.
No, I think that's a really good point because it is very unexpected. Just like the phone conversation is a little unexpected, like the behavior of these adults, this behavior of the decision makers who are guiding the direction of our country in terms of international policy is like met with a lot of immaturity, and I'm not quite sure that inspires a lot of confidence. Let's go here and then there.
And along with what they were saying, like, I think the tone of the conversation matches the content of the conversation, because he doesn't know the phone number to call when a mistake like this happens.
Yeah. Who should we call?
Like the president, I'm sure in real life, they know who to call.
You would
But
hope.
like he's portraying it like in maybe in 1964 they didn't.
Yeah.
But he has to ask him for the phone number who to call.
Yeah.
So the whole tone of the conversation matches with like the content is that they don't even know who to call if there's an accident. Like
But neither does the premier of Russia. Well, like he knows who to call, he just doesn't know the number. Just call information and ask. It'll be
That's what
fine.
my staff is for, you know?
Be careful, Mr. President. I think he's a little drunk. You know, like he's a man of the people, but he's still a man. There's
He's at his girlfriend's.
Yeah, he's at his girlfriend's. Could you turn the music down? You know, like. So, what's scary about politics in this movie? Building off of what Ryan was saying about like the immaturity of these characters. What's scary? What's scary about our leaders and decision makers being immature? I don't know. Is it scary? Do we like that? We want that? Yeah, what do you think?
Well, the really scary thing to me was he was like, "Well, I'm not. I'm just as sorry as you are." I mean, I'm like, it was like, "Can you top this?" And
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like,
always a
"Please."
competition.
It was a competition. Mine is bigger.
Yeah. And on some level, right, there's that happening in this movie too. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the conversation also sets up a dichotomy between the strength of the weapons they're talking about and how like they're just humans. The conversation actually humanizes him and the Russian premier. They're just two people, but between the two people, they have the power to eliminate the planet.
Yeah.
But they're still not any more than just people. And they've lost control of a weapon that could destroy the planet.
Yeah.
And they're still just having a human conversation. So it
They
shows
may
that
be in charge, but they're not in control.
they're still just humans. You
That's
can't
a
be
really
in
good
charge
point.
of the size. It sets up the size difference between their ability as people versus the size of the weapons they have.
We took it too far. We've reached too far. And I think you said earlier, right? Once we let it out of the bottle,
Like Terminator.
like Terminator or Frankenstein.
Or Frankenstein.
Pandora.
Yeah, no. As long as someone's keeping a running tally, because someone else asked, does he talk about Frankenstein every time? And now I'm just doing it for fun. It's like Tarantino and the feet. I'm just doing it for fun now. Yeah? Thoughts? No. Okay. You got anything back there? Because I can't really see you. No. You let me know, though. Wave at me. All right. Do you see parallels between this film and our own world?
Yes.
Okay. How? Why? I don't know. Is nuclear fear, competition still a real concern?
Now they're playing a mental game. When you think about it, you've got the bots and the social media, and they're just sort of like setting us against each other and standing back and watching. So it's like they're stirring the shit and then watching the outcome. Pardon my French.
No, okay. I mean, you caused that child to leave with that language. It's okay, he'll be back. Yeah.
As opposed to having the grand film footage of the 50 megaton bomb, the 100 megaton bomb being popularized on TV, newsreels, whatever was current at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there you had a more tangible, this is what this means. Whereas if we say, well, you know, it was a computer virus that, you know, caused the centrifuges to malfunction and destroy themselves. What's that mean?
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
but I saw the big bombs.
Saw the big explosion. That's true.
You've also got the electromagnetic pulse weapons, which you
EM
can launch in
EMP.
space. They're going to render all of our technology kind of useless. Problem is, it renders their technology useless too.
Yeah. And you see it in the Matrix, right? That's humanity's greatest weapon until Neo against the machines is the EMP, right? But it's going to disable your ship if you use it. So there's a bit of that mutually assured, I guess, electronic destruction at least, yeah. So let's think about the creation in a different way for a second, right? Let's think about what this reality has created in terms of people, right? And let's think about the people that are more closely resembling us in this movie, who would be the flight crew or the military on the base, right? Because we're not the people sitting at that big table in the war room. If anything, we're the grunts on the ground, right? We're the common folk. So what do you see with those people in this movie, right? How has the politics and the technology and all this other stuff affected us normals? That's still PC to say, right? Yes, and then yes.
Just sort of like when the troops are coming into the military base where the crazy guy is, the soldiers who are guarding it are like, wow, they almost look like the real things
Yeah.
to the like transport vehicles, even though they are the real thing.
Right.
Because like they've been told, oh, they're going to use fake transport vehicles to try to get close.
Yeah.
Don't believe it. They'll look real. Just don't trust it.
Yeah, no, and they believe it, right? Because
Yeah.
they were told it by someone in authority.
Yeah, and they were like, they almost look like the real thing because like they're sort of convinced that no, that's not actually what they look like.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, and then yes.
Well, so you would imagine at some point this Ripper guy has told everybody at the base to attack if anybody comes in, that they're dressed in costume, whatever. And you kind of imagine that you'd like have a second person that would follow up with that. And they just keep on attacking this new group that's come in, and they're attacking each other, and they're on the same side, and that nobody has questioned the whole time, like, what is happening and why are these people coming to attack us. So you kind of get the idea from that we're the simpletons. We're just like the simple common people. We
morons.
I think that's interesting because like the we are not portrayed as like the morons though. It's the politicians that are really portrayed as morons. But when you think about like who's more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows the fool, right? Like it does kind of fit with what you're saying then.
Yeah, and it's the same in the plane. They are just simple guys having simple conversations in the plane. Meanwhile,
and doing what they're told because that's what they've been trained to do.
Exactly, and I mean they don't know about the doomsday machine, but they are essentially there are lots of people that are responsible for the planet getting exploded. But at the end of the day, the guy pressed the button and fell down, and he was the one that made the first shot, I guess.
He's also like, when the call comes in for Plan R, he's like, I told you not to joke around, right? I don't want any goofing around on my plane. Why don't you confirm this? Somebody else is like, couldn't this be a loyalty test? But ultimately, when it's confirmed, they're like, well, okay, if they're ordering us to do this, this means that the Russians must have bombed us first, and everyone you love back home is injured or dead, and we now need to go and avenge them, and drop these bombs on Russia. So human ingenuity, just to remind everyone, is like what separates us from the machines, right? Our ability to think outside the box and adapt and problem solve to situations that aren't pre-programmed, that we don't have explicit experience with before, right? Our schema, it's not there. You don't have something you're basing it off of, prior knowledge, right? You're able to adapt and do something new. And usually in these films that we watch, there's a statement being made about like, well, this is what still makes us superior to the machines, and like this is why there's still hope. Terminators, Matrixes, all of the aliens, all of those things. But in this movie, it's a little different. It's almost like it's working detrimentally against us. Our own innate ability to rise above the occasion, to keep going, right, to overcome the obstacles, ensures the end of the world in this movie, at least with the flight crew, right? With the scene with Dr. Strangelove in the end, right? Like with the bunkers and everything, the mine shafts, that also isn't solving of a problem, right? But let's think about that, and let's think about, is there any hope for us with this movie?
When I watch this movie, you don't see any solution in the movie itself.
Yeah.
The solution is to look at the movie and understand, like, okay, well, Slim Pickens might have been the most intelligent character in the movie, or Mandrake.
Yeah.
And, like, those are obviously the people who should be president, not anybody else.
But those are the people that are smart enough not to want the job.
Well, yeah, or don't have an ego big enough.
How many
to
times
run.
did George Washington refuse the presidency? Several. I can't think the exact same number, but he kept saying no, right? Yeah, well, he refused to be king. But originally we had the Articles of Confederation. He's like, it's not going to work. I don't want to be in charge of this. Like, it's not going to work. And states' rights became an issue.
States' rights is always an issue.
Always an issue, yeah.
Still,
yeah, it never goes away. The problems in the beginning are the problems that are always going to be there. Especially if you don't really address them.
but you have to have some sort of consensus on how to address them, and we can't seem to arrive at that.
Because our culture is schizophrenic, right, and divided against itself, and sports team mentality, and we're pointing fingers at the people on the other teams and telling them they suck, right? Like.
Well, yeah, but that also starts from the top.
Trickle down.
The only way you can really control the situation is to control the thinking. And to constantly say, oh, it's fake news, when the news is theoretically telling the truth, and oh, it's the other side. I mean, and because you've pretty much bred out the ability for critical thinking, so you have a population that will just follow.
Yeah. It's the British guy who can think critically. It's, well, I guess Slim
They're not
Pickens
American.
also.
Oh my God.
Seriously, it's a problem. I mean,
They're the most outsiders, right? There's a British guy who's not the American there, and there's a Texan,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is its own country. So,
It was,
and
right?
those are the two most free-thinking people in the thing. Like,
That's true. What you had said prior to that, remind me of, and then I'll get you. Like, the president does not shape culture. The president is a reflection of culture. These movies do not shape our cultures. They reflect, like, aspects of our culture. Yeah, go ahead.
So I see kind of like two takeaways you could have. One is that it's saying that almost the stupid is inevitable. It just
It's like Idiocracy
that's,
almost?
Yeah, like human nature is it's going to escalate.
Yeah.
But the other one is that there's a lot of points in this movie where if you just questioned authority, it would have gone in a different direction. Because as much as like it's a doomsday machine, it's also like a Rube Goldberg machine scenario, where like all these pieces had to come together at like the right moments in order for it to go off, and any person could have gotten involved.
Comedy
at
of
any point.
errors. You know, perfect
Yeah, it's
storm.
very dramatic
Yeah.
irony a little bit.
Yeah. Final thoughts, conclusions, whatever you think. Yeah.
I think it's weird because the movie kind of wants to make you question, like, the role of leadership or whether you should be trusting your leaders. And so in America, you have like the First Amendment and free speech. Stanley Kubrick's made other movies questioning governments, like he did Paths to Glory, which was banned in France because it questioned their leadership in World War I. But in America, they just let this movie come out, and it still didn't change anything.
Yeah.
Like, I think that what's fascinating is that, like, it doesn't matter that you can see this movie. They still elect the same crazy people to, like, it's not like it ended the Cold War. It was like, this should be a wake up that, like, oh, the Cold War could get out of hand. We could all die. It
Yeah.
was made at a time when people were really afraid of that happening. And absolutely nothing happened, which is strange because and the government, who this movie's directly targeted at, didn't care, let it come out, showed the entire country, and they're like, there's nothing you can do about this.
Yeah.
Which I think is a great, like, commentary on, like,
Well, yeah.
the inevitability of this kind of stuff. Like, what doesn't matter if you know that that's what the president, or even if you imagine or ridicule the president, it's still got to happen. It's not like you can stop fighting the Russians.
Yeah.
They definitely will kill you if you put your guns down.
Okay.
I mean, like, that's, you know,
Yeah.
they had plans for that. I mean, so, like, it was kind of weird. Like, there's a lot of inevitability stuff in this movie. And yet, at the same time, it, like, really played out in the real world. And what's interesting about, like, movies and stuff is that other movies he made where you criticize governments are banned. Like, if this movie were made the exact opposite, but in Russia, it wouldn't have come out in Russia.
Sure, yeah.
The premier would have never allowed this movie to actually occur in Russia. In America, they let this movie come out, and they were like, whatever, it's not going to change anything.
Well, yeah, that goes back to the whole, like, we know we're electing selfish idiots, right? But we keep electing selfish idiots, right? Like, we know it, like, we see it, we keep going through the cycle, but then, like, we keep making that same mistake. And you see that at the end of the movie where, like, oh, the mine shaft gap, right? We're making that same mistake again, thinking everything's a competition. Like, mutually assured destruction should show us we're all in it together, maybe, right? Like, we're all gonna die together. Maybe we should start living together, too.
Well, I think that's what makes his movies good, is that they're ambiguous. I mean, all of them
on
end
a lot of
ambiguously.
levels.
Objective art, you know, it's open to interpretation.
I put a lot of parallels with this movie in, like, to what's it called, Clockwork Orange. And how he changed the ending to be, like, completely ambiguous. Because the end of the book.
Yep. No
Yeah,
chapter
and-
21 in America. Only chapter up to 20.
Right. At the end of the book, it was like, oh, well.
Spoilers. All right. I know what you're gonna say. Save it for
Anyway,
another
yeah.
time.
So that he makes the movie an ambiguous
There's a
ending,
reason.
and this movie ends up ambiguous. But that's what makes the movies good. Is
Yeah.
It's not like he's telling you what the answer is.
Yeah,
Or
he's
not even giving you an opinion what the answer is. He's just showing you what it is.
There was another quote. I feel like I'm full of quotes, and I don't remember who said any of these quotes today. But there's another quote where it's like, films aren't meant to fill up your cups. They're meant to light your fires. Right? And they're not gonna give you the answers. They're gonna inspire you to go and find the answers for yourself. Right? They're gonna give you the questions, and you're gonna go and find them on your own. All right, so thank you all for being here. I know for some of us it was a little more of a struggle than others, so I appreciate us all for being here. We're really nothing without you, right? You guys are the thing that makes this thing great, and we would be nothing without you. So in season 2, next time we'll be meeting is in July. I believe it's July 11th, because the first Friday is July 3rd, and I think because
With the holiday.
I can't hear anything on this, but I can hear the people are like talking. So I know. I'll tell you the date in a second because I'll change it. But we're gonna watch some Kubrick movies. We did a poll. So next time we'll get a little ultraviolet and we'll talk about Clockwork Orange.
I
July
finally get
10th.
to see it.
We'll talk about that on July
I've
10th.
never seen
so
it.
I was wrong. It's not July 11th.
Good luck.
It's a rough one. So we'll see. I told someone we're gonna do the good ones, and you might disagree, but we're gonna try to do the good Kubricks. Okay, so next time,
So that means we're not
Clockwork
doing
Orange.
Ice
Let's give
White
each other a round of applause. Thank you very much.